My name's Alex. I'm a compulsive overeater and bulimic. My absence date is the 7th of February 2023. I choose 3 weighed and measured meals from the Cambridge Grey Sheet. I write those meals down and commit them to a qualified Cambridge Grey Sheet sponsor. I eat what I've committed and nothing else, no matter what. I'm not 100%, so I'm just going to speak from the heart. That's all I can give, really. Food for me was definitely my first addiction. From a really young age, I remember being conflicted around food, about not knowing how to behave, what to consume, what not to consume. I had a mum who was a restrictor, so that would encourage us. I'm one of 3 girls. It would encourage us to kind of secretly. And then my dad is Italian, and he was a feeder. So I just remember it being really confusing. And my dad owned restaurants, so he used to bring home lots of food, leftover food, and we would kind of eat that. And my mum would just give us that look. And you knew if you had that look as you walked across the room that you'd put weight on. So it was really tough growing up in terms of around the dinner table. It was really difficult to know whether we should finish our plate, whether we shouldn't. I mean, my dad, he would almost test us. So it would be like he'd give us a plate of food and he'd load it up and he would test us to see if we were going to eat it all. And if we finished it, we were greedy. And if we didn't, we weren't grateful. So it was just like a complete mess. It was so confusing. And I remember when I was about 8 years old, a friend of mine was sent home from school for being sick. And I was really jealous. And I worked out that I could make myself sick. And I made myself sick. And I said, oh, I've been sick as well. And I was sent home from school. That's kind of my earliest memory of like acting out around it. And then fast forward into at the age of 15, we were allowed a little bit of freedom at school. So we were going out in our lunch break, going down to the supermarket, buying a copious amount of food, bringing it back. And I was at an all-girls school, and we just all used to make ourselves sick together. It was like a really normal thing to do, but I think unfortunately I probably took it to the extreme, and 20 years on was still doing it. And I just remember it always being really confusing around food. I was either too big, too small. I mean, I literally would have fluctuated about 6. I was never really overweight because I always made myself sick. And actually, last year when I first came into Grey Sheet, I really struggled around people talking about big numbers. But I realized this time round when I came in, the only reason I wasn't big numbers is because it all ended up back down the toilet. So, and the lying and the manipulation and the cheating, I've been hospitalized due to significant issues with my potassium levels. I ended up with heart murmurs because of that, because my electrolytes were so out. I ended up being tube fed for a bit, but I worked out that I could take the feed to the toilet, empty it, and fill it up with water because it was a slightly different color, so you couldn't see what was inside, and then reset the settings so that I was basically being tube fed water. So the level of manipulation that I went to, I was so desperate to keep weight off. And for me, I kind of describe it like quicksand. At times in my life when my life was falling apart, I would hold on to the food, but the control would slip through my fingers. It was just sand. I thought that it was helping me, and I thought it was my surviving and my coping mechanism, but actually I wasn't able to hold on to it. And it got worse and worse and worse, to the point that probably at my worst, I was making myself sick up to 15 times a day. It was just awful. I've ended up with a hiatus hernia. I mean, the list is endless in terms of the damage that I have done to my body. And I don't, and most of that has been reversible, thank goodness. But I could just never sit down at a table with anyone without thinking about what you were eating. I couldn't concentrate on any conversations because I was just thinking about you not finishing your food. And then I would spend the whole time beating myself up. Should I eat that food? Should I not eat that food? Should I go to the toilet? Shall I not? Oh, I didn't go to the toilet. This is great. Oh, but I'll do it when I walk out of the restaurant, and I'll go and buy another £50 worth of food and do it then. And it was just this like constant battle and this constant turmoil. And for me, it was, I used to secretly all the time, because of the fear of being judged. You know, I would always like sneak back. I've stolen food from supermarkets, from friends' drawers of fridges. You know, I sneak down in the night if I was staying over, and I'd go and eat your food. And it didn't matter to me. I had no real boundaries around what was healthy or acceptable or what wasn't. I was so desperate to fill that void and to change the way I felt, and I didn't know how to do it any other way. And part of my story is drugs and alcohol as well. And 6 years ago, my son was removed from me. He was 4.5 at the time, and he was removed from me by social services. And I realized at that point that I had to address my addictions. And I say addictions because basically to me, it's just a symptom of the same illness. I want to change the way I feel. I want to suppress the way I feel. I constantly want to change, run away from who I am. And I will fill that void, whether it's with food, whether it's with drugs, whether it's with anything, doesn't matter. I will try and seek out something. And I realized at that point that I had to change, but I still lied for another 8 months. And I went to the family courts, and there was a fact-finding hearing. And the judge, for the first time in my life, someone had looked at me in the eye and seen straight through me. It was the first time I hadn't been able to lie and manipulate any further. And she said, someone like you will never change. Someone like you needs to have 4 times a year contact with your son, because you need an identity check and not a relationship with him, because you're not capable of changing. It was the best thing anyone ever said to me, because I went, fuck you. Someone like me does change. Someone like me does have the capacity to change. And for 3 years, I fought really hard at looking at my food. I was desperate not to come into a food fellowship. I was able to apply kind of the food stuff because I was so desperate to prove, for the wrong reason, to prove to everyone, social services, the criminal justice system, solicitors, family, my ex-husband, that I could do it. And so for 3 years, I kind of was abstinent, thereabouts. And then I went to prison, and I served a year inside for neglect. And within 10 days, my food was completely and utterly out of control. And I served a year in there. My last 3 months of my sentence was in COVID. So I was 23.5 hours a day locked up with nothing. And that for me was the hardest time of my life. We used to order food on, you could order canteen food, so like the treats on the Friday. I would work out what you'd hand in your slip on the Tuesday, you'd receive it on the Friday, and I would absolutely promise myself every week that it would still be there by the following Friday. It was gone by the Friday night. I just couldn't do it. And then the half an hour I was allowed out of my prison cell, I'd literally, like a mad woman, be searching for food anywhere in the prison where I could grab whatever I could and take it back to my cell, and it would be gone that night. And it was just this awful, vicious cycle. It was horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous. And I had day one every day. I was like, tomorrow is going to be different. It has to be. And then, so when I was then released from prison, I used to steal food from the prison. I mean, if I got caught, I remember we had chickens down in the gardens, and I was like putting all these eggs in my bra and walking up, and it, you know, at the time it was really funny. We used to get away with it all, but it was this constant need to break the rules just to feed my soul. So then I was released nearly 3 years ago now, and I spent a year and a half in like awful shame and just hating myself, like absolutely hating myself. The stuff I used to tell myself was horrendous. And I thought that I could get on top of my food using AA alone, which is what I did previously, but I couldn't. So, I was like, I got to be able to do it. Surely I can do this. And I started, and I went into OA, and I had a very, very tough American sponsor. And he said to me, this is what you're going to eat: breakfast, lunch, dinner. I thought, okay, I can do that. And I got about 4 or 5 weeks. And then he said, this is what I've been doing for 18 years, but the same food. The same thing at lunch and dinner, exactly the same food, and slightly different breakfast for 18 years. And I thought, I'm not doing that. And then last year, I just was like, I wanted to lose weight. That's why I came in last year. I wanted to lose weight. And
5 minutes, Alex, 5 minutes.
thank you, Nancy. Thank you. And I was kind of just, I was sick and tired, but the motivation underneath it all was I wanted to lose weight. So when I lost the weight, and I had a real issue with night eating. So I would get up in the night, half asleep, and eat. So I kept going back to day one, day one, day one. But I realized in that time that I had freedom around food. That, thank God, that seed was planted. I realized in that period of time, for a couple of, I don't know how many, I don't think I ever got past about 50 days last year, but I did but then I would back to day one. But I realized in that time I could get freedom, and I would be sitting next to because my son's back in my life now. And this is one of the motivations. I realized last year I was sat across the table with him and then in the cinema with him the same day. And I couldn't watch the film at all. All I was thinking about was what he was eating. And I thought, oh my God, I haven't fought this hard to have a relationship with Henry, my son, to actually only be thinking about food. I wasn't really interested in like, you know, being engaged and having a conversation with him, because I physically couldn't do it. I was so distracted by the obsession of food in my mind that I couldn't have that intimate, you know, kind of emotionally attuned relationship with him. And I thought there must be more to this. So anyways, so I started to do GreySheet. I lost the weight, and then I stopped coming because I lost the weight. And then I wrote my New Year's Eve letter on the 31st of December. For the last kind of 10 years, I write a letter to myself to open the following New Year's Eve. And I opened it up, and I read all the previous ones to my partner, and every single one said, I hope next year I haven't got an issue around my food. And I thought, oh my God, I'm so sick and tired of this. Every single, like my diary, everything was just like, please address the food. Alex, address the food. And then I found my friend hanging in January, and she was a very good friend of mine in AA, and she died. We didn't get there in time, but she'd spent £700 on food in the 2 weeks leading up to her death. And I thought, why am I any different to her? I'm not. I haven't got that bad in terms of wanting to die right now, but I just got to a point where I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. So fast forward, I came into GreySheet. I didn't think I would be able to do it. I just worked really hard on keeping it in the day. Every day I was like, this, just for today, I can do this. I can do it. I didn't eat out for the first 80 days. I was too scared. And I'm glad I did that, because last year that was a trigger for me. And I don't do anything I don't feel safe to do. If I don't feel safe to do it, I just won't go to it. Today I was in a golf match. There was tea and food that we can't have afterwards. I stayed for 5 minutes to welcome in the rest of the team. I said, I'm off now. I don't need to prove to anyone. I still find it a bit uncomfortable measuring my food in a restaurant, but if I don't feel comfortable with it, I just don't go at the moment. My abstinent has become the most important thing before anything. My son likes to think that he's going to go and take my food, my weighed and measured food, and he now knows that he cannot do that. And it's like a hot flame if he hovers his hand anywhere near my food. He has his, I have mine. We sit at the table every time we eat now. We sit at the table. I won't sit in front of the television. It's become part of enjoying our meals together. It's part of having conversation. It's a part about being a healthy family unit. But the biggest gift of all is that I'm not obsessed about food. I really am not. I look forward to my food. I eat my food, and then I don't think about my food again until the next meal. If my food's running out, I always work a couple of days ahead. I plan my food for the next couple of days. I cook everything off. I put it in Tupperware, it's weighed and measured. I commit that food to my sponsor every morning, and that's the food that I eat. And I don't eat anything else. And it has become quite simple. I know I'm going to come across challenges. My biggest challenge for me is when I don't feel 100%, if I'm overtired, if I've left it a little bit too long in between meals because something's become later. But now, like today, I was playing golf from 10:30. I made sure I pushed my breakfast slightly later because I knew I wasn't going to eat on the golf course, so that I could have
Alex.
Thank you, Nancy. So that I could eat my lunch slightly later. And it's just about fine tuning and tweaking. But all I know is it does take up quite a lot of my time, sometimes preparing, especially the copious amounts of vegetables that we eat. But it's a lot less time than the time that was spent obsessing about food and hating myself. So for me, it's a really, really small price to pay. And the gift it's given me to myself and to, you know, even to my best friend, you know, Becca, who died, who didn't get it. The gift is that she's given it to me. And I'm a healthier parent and a healthier Alex as a result. So yeah, thank you very much for asking me, Laura. Thanks a lot.